A routine crosswalk encounter turns explosive when a white cop publicly humiliates an elderly black woman. The crowd watches in uncomfortable silence, unaware that this fragile-looking woman carries a history that will shatter an entire department. Her calm response ignites the start of a quiet war. Hey! A routine crosswalk encounter turns explosive when a white cop publicly humiliates an elderly black woman. The crowd watches in uncomfortable silence, unaware that this fragile-looking woman carries a history that will shatter an entire department. Her calm response ignites the start of a quiet war. Hey! Are you blind or just plain stupid? This street ain't for beggars. Officer Cooper's voice cracked through the humid summer air like a whip. The city sidewalk froze. Cars paused mid-turn. A hush settled over the bustling avenue as dozens of eyes turned toward the trembling figure at the crosswalk. An old black woman, probably late 70s, with a cane in one hand and dignity in the other. She was petite, dressed in a faded grey shawl, patterned skirt and orthopedic shoes. Her name was Odessa May King. Her walk was slow but deliberate, the kind that had carried her through decades of storms. Across the street, a mother clutched her son's hand tighter. A teenager pulled out his phone. Two elderly white men leaned. On a bench, whispering, Cooper stepped forward, his face twisted in disdain. "Don't pretend you didn't hear me, lady. Move your slow ass. You're blocking traffic." The words hung heavy in the air, dripping with contempt. Odessa didn't flinch. She lifted her head slowly, revealing soft but steady eyes, sightless but not powerless. A breeze carried the tension like smoke. Her left hand slightly shook, gripping the cane, but her voice didn't tremble. "This crosswalk is legal. I waited for the signal." "Signal?" Cooper sneered. "You think this department built that for people like you?" He snatched her white cane and cracked it across his knee. The brittle sound snapped through the silence. Someone gasped. Another muttered, "Yo, that's messed up." A phone camera locked focus. Odessa didn't move. Her hand stayed hovering in the air where the cane once was. Her face still, her lips tight, her eyes clouded but sharp with memory. Then came the turn. She spoke. "You just made a mistake, Officer Cooper." He laughed. "Yeah? And what are you gonna do about it, Grandma?" Odessa tilted her head slightly, almost curious. "You'll find out. Soon." She turned, slowly, and walked, without help, to the edge of the sidewalk. Every footstep marked a line in a battle she hadn't yet declared. The teenager filming whispered, "Yo, she just said you'll find out. This finna go viral." But it wasn't just a viral moment. It was a spark. The beginning of a reckoning. Because what no one knew was that Odessa May King wasn't just some frail, blind old lady. She was the mother of a buried scandal, the widow of a fallen whistleblower, and the woman who kept every receipt, blind or just plain stupid. This street ain't for beggars. Officer Cooper's voice cracked through the humid summer air like a whip. The city sidewalk froze. Cars paused mid-turn. A hush settled over the bustling avenue as dozens of eyes turned toward the trembling figure at the crosswalk. An old black woman, probably late 70s, with a cane in one hand and dignity in the other. She was petite, dressed in a faded grey shawl, patterned skirt, and orthopedic shoes. Her name was Odessa May King. Her walk was slow but deliberate, the kind that had carried her through decades of storms. Across the street, a mother clutched her son's hand tighter. A teenager pulled out his phone. Two elderly white men leaned on a bench, whispering. Cooper stepped forward, his face twisted in disdain. "Don't pretend you didn't hear me, lady. Move your slow ass. You're blocking traffic." The words hung heavy in the air, dripping with contempt. Odessa didn't flinch. She lifted her head slowly, revealing soft but steady eyes. Sightless, but not powerless. A breeze carried the tension like smoke. Her left hand slightly shook, gripping the cane, but her voice didn't tremble. "This crosswalk is legal. I waited for the signal." Signal? Cooper sneered. You think this department built that for people like you? He snatched her white cane and cracked it across his knee. The brittle sound snapped through the silence. Someone gasped. Another muttered, "Yo, that's messed up." A phone camera locked focus. Odessa didn't move. Her hand stayed hovering in the air where the cane once was. Her face, still. Her lips, tight. Her eyes, clouded but sharp with memory. Then came the turn. She spoke. "You just made a mistake, Officer Cooper." He laughed. "Yeah? And what are you going to do about it, Grandma?" Odessa tilted her head slightly, almost curious. "You'll find out. Soon." She turned, slowly, and walked, without help, to the edge of the sidewalk. Every footstep marked a line in a battle she hadn't yet declared. The teenager filming whispered, "Yo, she just said you'll find out. This finna go viral." But it wasn't just a viral moment. It was a spark, the beginning of a reckoning, because what no one knew was that Odessa May King wasn't just some frail, blind old lady. She was the mother of a buried scandal, the widow of a fallen whistleblower, and the woman who kept every receipt. By the time Odessa stepped through the rusted gate of her apartment complex, the city's digital veins were already pulsing, hashtags formed, clips trimmed, filters added, and Officer Cooper's smirk, frozen in high definition, traveled faster than he ever could. Odessa's building stood like a tired soldier in the heart of the old district. Faded paint, creaking stairs, a history layered in silence and survival. She lived on the second floor. No elevator, no neighbors who asked questions. Her keys jingled as she unlocked the door. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lavender and old paper. The furniture was plain, wooden chairs, a worn sofa, curtains thick enough to shut out the world. On the wall hung a single framed photograph, a black man in uniform, eyes sharp, posture proud, her late husband, Arthur King, a man too honest for the system he served, a man who died trying to clean it from within. She sat in her armchair, her fingers gliding across the wood grain of the side table. She didn't need to see the room. She knew every inch, but today something called to her. From the closet. Behind, her husband's old coats. She rose slowly, using the wall for balance. Her hand brushed across familiar fabric, reaching deeper until her fingers struck metal. A small lockbox, forgotten for years. She brought it out, placed it on the table and opened it. The hinges groaned like ghosts. Inside, papers, old reports, newspaper clippings, an unlabeled flash drive, a leather badge holder, cracked but preserved, and a single handwritten letter. "Odie," it began, "if anything happens to me, don't let them bury the truth. You were always the fire. Keep it burning." Her hands shook as she held the letter to her chest. For years she had avoided this moment. Choose peace over pain, silence over scars, but not anymore. Across town, Officer Cooper sat in the precinct lounge, laughing with his colleagues. "You should have seen her face when I broke that cane, like someone kicked her dog." Someone slid a phone across the table. "You're trending, man." Cooper raised an eyebrow, pressed play. "Watch the video." His laughter dimmed. The clip was short, but the words hit hard. "You just made a mistake, Officer Cooper. You'll find out. Soon." He frowned. "Who the hell is she?" No one had an answer, but the city would soon, because Odessa May King wasn't backing down. She was digging up everything, and this time she wouldn't be alone. The next morning, Odessa sat at her small kitchen table, the morning sun casting sharp lines through the blinds. In front of her lay the documents Arthur had left behind. Names, badge numbers, times, dates, page after page, that smelled of smoke, blood, and betrayal. The kind of details only a man on the inside could gather. She plugged in the flash drive. Her old laptop took its time booting, the machine groaning from years of near retirement. When it finally loaded, the screen flickered and revealed folders. One was labeled Echo, another Cooper. Her fingers paused. That name again. Her knuckles tightened. She opened the file. Videos, audio logs, reports. And there it was, an internal affairs complaint filed by her husband 10 years ago, alleging racial profiling, falsified evidence, use of excessive force. And the lead. Name, Officer Dylan Cooper. Her breath hitched. The same Cooper, younger in the reports but no less venomous. Arthur had tried to expose him. The file ended with a single red-stamped line, "Case closed, insufficient evidence." Odessa's eyes burned. Insufficient? She'd buried her husband with the weight of that lie on his chest, but he hadn't gone quietly. He left her the truth, and now she would finish what he started. Across town, in the dim-lit locker room of the 9th Precinct, Cooper stood shirtless at his locker when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the message. "What you did yesterday, it's just the beginning. No name, no number, just a warning." He looked around, empty. Still his gut clenched. He deleted the text, shook it off, and slammed the locker shut. Out in the bullpen, the atmosphere had shifted. A few younger officers looked at him sideways. One of the sergeants, quiet and stoic, didn't return his usual nod. The precinct captain called him in. "Dylan, there's heat on that incident with the old lady. It's all over local networks, even city council's watching." Cooper rolled his eyes. "She was blocking traffic. She was blind," the captain snapped. "And now she's got half the internet behind her. You need to lay low." Cooper left the office, gritting his teeth. No one used to question him. Not 10 years ago, not 5. What the hell was going on? Back in her apartment, Odessa picked up the badge holder from the lockbox. Arthur's old ID. She held it like a relic. A war medal from a battle they never finished. Her mind sharpened. The flame inside her chest, long buried beneath grief and time, had reignited. She stood. She reached for her phone. And she dialed. "Hello, this is City Newsroom." "Yes," she said, her voice calm and deliberate. "I have a story about the 9th Precinct, and you're going to want to hear it." The cafe was quiet, nestled between a bookstore and a laundromat on the city's east side. Maya Jordan arrived first. Young, sharp, and restless. Her recorder and notebook were already on the table. She sipped coffee, but kept scanning the door. She didn't know what to expect. Then the bell jingled. Odessa stepped in, her cane tapping lightly against the tiled floor. She moved with slow confidence, her sunglasses firm on her face, her posture upright. She felt the stares, but she welcomed them. Today, they would listen. Maya stood. "Mrs. King, Odessa is fine." She reached out and found the edge of the seat without help. Maya pressed record. "You said you had information about corruption in the 9th Precinct?" Odessa's voice was steady. "Not just corruption, a cover-up, one that cost my husband his life and allowed a man like Officer Cooper to keep his badge." Maya didn't blink. "Start from the beginning." For the next 45 minutes, Odessa spoke with the clarity of someone who'd waited too long to be heard. She didn't give everything, just enough. Enough to make Maya lean forward. Enough to make her pen run out of ink. Names, dates, missing case files, audio recordings, the broken cane, the flash drive. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she closed her notebook. "I want to help you tell this story, but I'll need to verify everything." Odessa nodded. "Then verify it. I'm not going anywhere, but they will." Across town, Cooper sat in his cruiser, windows down, cigarette burning. His phone buzzed again. Another anonymous message. "Your history is leaking. Dylan, you should have retired when you had the chance." He slammed the phone on the dash. Paranoia gnawed at him. He stormed into the precinct and pulled aside his old partner, Reynolds. "You talking to anybody? You telling stories?" Reynolds frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I'm being watched. Someone's stirring up old crap. I know it's about the king. That woman, she's not just some sidewalk relic." Reynolds hesitated. You remember what happened, don't you? With Arthur? Shut up, Cooper snapped. That case died with him. Are you sure about that? Back in the cafe, Maya packed her things. Before leaving, she paused. Why now, Odessa? Why after all these years? Odessa smiled faintly. Because the world forgot. And I forgave. Too much, but not anymore. As Maya stepped outside, her phone vibrated. An email from an encrypted address. Subject line, start with file Echo 7. Attachment, one of Arthur King's sealed reports. And just like that, the story found its breath. The file labeled Echo 7 was 37 pages long. Maya read every line. Twice. It detailed an incident from 12 years ago, an unauthorized raid on a black family's home in the early morning hours. No warrant, no warning, just boots, guns, and chaos. Arthur King had been the supervising officer at the time. He filed a formal objection afterward, stating that the raid was initiated by Officer Dylan Cooper on falsified gang intel. A child had been injured. The family was traumatized. But the department swept it under the rug, claiming procedural miscommunication. Arthur's complaint disappeared. Maya leaned back in her chair, eyes wide with disbelief. This wasn't just negligence. It was surgical, calculated, protected. She reached for her phone and called Odessa. Mrs. King, I think I found why they wanted your husband silent. You haven't even scratched the surface, Odessa replied. Arthur documented 5 more incidents like that, and no one ever listened. Maya's voice hardened. They'll listen now. Odessa sat alone on her couch, the cane resting beside her like a sword she never had to swing. Her fingers brushed across the tapes and typed notes Arthur had labeled by year. His handwriting, always neat, somehow looked more urgent now. She didn't cry. Not anymore. Instead, she whispered to the air, You hear that, Arthur? They're finally looking. Meanwhile, Cooper paced inside the locker room, sweat dripping down his temple. Another officer passed him, avoiding eye contact. Even his old friends were getting quiet. His phone buzzed. From unknown. I know what you did to Arthur King. So does the city now. He threw the phone into the bench. It cracked. He picked it up. His breath heavy, knuckles white. He stormed out of the room and into the captain's office. You need to shut this down. There's an old woman stirring up nonsense with a blogger or something. She's not just anyone, the captain interrupted. The city council's legal committee just called. They want to open an investigation into past IA reports. You need to sit down and shut up until this blows over. Cooper's nostrils flared. She's blind. She can't prove anything. The captain looked at him coldly. She doesn't need to see, Dylan. She just needs to talk. And right now, a whole city's listening. That night, Maya uploaded her first blog post, The Odessa Files, Part 1, When Justice Sleeps. It included redacted versions of Echo 7, photo stills of Arthur King, and a short audio clip from one of his internal interviews. Within hours, it had 80,000 views, then 200,000, then trending, and at the very bottom of the post, to be continued, with evidence they tried to erase. By morning, the air in the city felt heavier. Street corners buzzed with conversation. Radios, phones, even office coffee machines echoed the same name. Odessa May King. Maya's article had gone viral. Talk shows debated it. Activist groups picked it up. Even law professors were quoting Arthur King's redacted report as a case study in modern corruption. Outside the 9th precinct, a crowd began to form. Peaceful, determined. People holding signs that read, Justice for King, and Start with Cooper. Inside the building, no one laughed anymore. Cooper walked through the halls like a shadow. Whispers followed him now. In the captain's office, the atmosphere was stone cold. Do you have any idea how bad this looks? The captain said. She's manipulating the press, Cooper argued. "She's quoting your record. She doesn't need to manipulate a damn thing." Cooper clenched his fists. "This is a witch hunt." The captain leaned back. "You buried evidence, Dylan, lied in your reports, ignored procedures, and now the department's getting buried with you." Back at Odessa's apartment, her landline wouldn't stop ringing. Strangers, reporters, families who remembered Arthur. Young kids who'd never met him, but now wore his name on their shirts. One woman called in tears. "My brother was arrested in one of Cooper's raids. He never came back the same. Thank you for finally saying what we couldn't." Odessa listened quietly to every call. She didn't say much, just wrote the names down in her notebook. In the afternoon, Maya returned. She brought a camera crew this time, a real one. "You sure you want to do this on record?" she asked. Odessa nodded. "They hid his face for too long. Let them see mine." They filmed in the living room. Maya kept the questions direct. Odessa's answers were calm, sharp, unwavering. She spoke of Arthur, the cover-up, the broken cane, and the man who hadn't changed in over a decade. Maya turned off the camera. "The network's going to run this as a feature." "Good," Odessa said. "Just make sure they spell his name right." That night, the protest doubled in size. Candles were lit, a small choir sang, "A change is gonna come." Cooper watched it all from his window. A cigarette burned to the filter in his fingers. He didn't hear the knock at his door. When he opened it, a sealed envelope was on the ground. Inside, an anonymous court summons. The department was opening an internal tribunal. Cooper was officially under investigation. And at the bottom of the letter, in stamped black ink, "Case reopened. King v. Cooper." The tribunal was held in a cold, narrow chamber tucked behind the police headquarters. A room that was rarely used, meant for internal hearings that were never meant to reach public ears. But this time, things were different. A journalist had been granted observation. Cameras weren't allowed. But Maya sat in the rear row with her notebook, her pen dancing furiously. Odessa entered with grace. She wore a deep navy coat, her cane polished and steady. As she stepped into the hearing room, everyone noticed this woman was not weak. She was war-refined in silence. Officer Cooper sat at the front, arms crossed, lips tight. His attorney leaned in. "Stay composed. She's going to try to provoke you." Odessa took the witness seat. The tribunal lead, an older black woman with iron-gray hair, nodded solemnly. "State your name." "Odessa May King. And your relation to Arthur King." "His wife, his widow." The room stilled. Odessa reached into her bag and slowly pulled out the worn leather badge holder. She placed it on the desk before her like an offering. "This belonged to my husband. He believed in the badge until it betrayed him." Cooper's jaw clenched. Odessa continued. "He filed reports against Officer Cooper, detailing racial profiling, abuse of power, and falsified arrests. No one listened. And when he refused to stop documenting the truth, he died in a training accident." A murmur stirred behind her. Even the tribunal officers shifted uncomfortably. "I buried my husband with a promise I never wanted to keep. But Cooper reminded me, with a broken cane and the same arrogance he's always had, that silence was no longer an option." The tribunal lead asked, "Do you have evidence to support these claims?" Odessa nodded. "My husband left files, audio, documentation. Your department buried it, but now it's online, and people are listening." Cooper's lawyer stood. "Objection. This is character assassination." The lead waved. "Him off." "Sit down, counsel." Maya's heart pounded as she watched. She had never seen someone command a room without ever raising their voice. Later that day, Cooper tried contacting old friends inside the department, officers he once protected, sergeants who'd owed him favors. No one answered. One voicemail responded coldly, "We're not going down with you, Dylan." Alone in his apartment, Cooper slammed his badge onto the kitchen counter. It echoed like a gunshot. Across the city, a new petition circled. Suspend Officer Cooper pending trial. Within 3 hours, it had 90,000 signatures. The tribunal recessed for the day. Maya caught up to Odessa outside. "Do you feel like justice is coming?" Odessa didn't smile. She simply said, "Justice isn't a moment. It's a long walk, but I've got shoes." As she walked away down the courthouse steps, the city watched her like a storm walking toward its calm. The next morning, a brown envelope arrived at Maya's apartment door. No postage, no return address, just her name written in sharp black. Marker, inside, a USB drive and a yellow post-it. "This came from inside. You'll know what to do." She slid the drive into her laptop, hands shaking with anticipation. Dozens of files appeared, each titled with badge numbers, case IDs, dates. She opened one. It was a scanned document from 2013, a signed confession by an officer admitting to planting narcotics during a traffic stop. Supposedly lost in archives. The name at the bottom, Dylan Cooper. Another file showed internal memos between senior officers warning about Cooper's aggressive tendencies and racially biased patterns. Nothing had been done. She covered her mouth. These weren't just shadows of misconduct. This was a blueprint of a broken institution. She picked up her phone. "Odessa, I think the department's finally turning on itself." "Good," Odessa replied. "They've been silent for too long. It's time they hear their own echo." Meanwhile, at the precinct, tempers were boiling. Cooper stood in the briefing room as younger officers stared daggers through him. A few refused to take assignments with him. One rookie openly whispered, "I don't ride with racists." Sergeant Fields called Cooper into the back office. "You need to take a leave, effective immediately." Cooper's face went red. "This is mutiny. This is accountability. You're toxic. And if you stay in this building, the whole department burns." Outside, journalists camped near the precinct. Protests held signs quoting Arthur King's last memo. "If we don't clean our own house, someone else will burn it down." Odessa sat in her living room, drinking chamomile tea, her back straight. Her doorbell rang. It was Mrs. Ellison from 4C, an old neighbor she hadn't spoken to in years. Behind her stood her teenage grandson. "We saw the video," she said, softly. "I just wanted to say, I remember your husband. He helped my boy once. I never. Maya's latest article hit 1 million views before noon. National outlets picked it up. City officials squirmed under the spotlight, but the biggest shock came at the end of the piece. A single line. Her son is returning. No one knew Odessa had a son. She'd kept him out of it for years, shielding him from the weight of Arthur's death. But now, as the storm roared louder, she had called him home. His name was Elijah King, a high-profile civil rights attorney based in Washington, D.C., polished, precise, and relentless in courtrooms across the country. He hadn't returned to this city since the day they buried Arthur. When he stepped off the train, the media swarmed, but Elijah ignored the cameras. He walked straight to the courthouse, his expression like steel. At Odessa's apartment, he embraced her gently. "You shouldn't have done this alone, Mom." She touched his face. "You were too young to carry your father's fire back then. But now, you look ready." Elijah reviewed the files. His father's notes, Maya's articles, the tribunal proceedings. His jaw tightened with every detail. "This isn't just a scandal," he said. "It's a civil rights case, and we're going to court." Meanwhile, Cooper was unraveling. His apartment was a mess. Papers scattered, TV blaring news stories, dragging his name through ash. His phone buzzed non-stop. In a moment of reckless desperation, he stormed into the parking garage near Maya's office and waited. When she emerged alone, He stepped into her path. "You think you're saving the world?" he hissed. Maya held her ground. "I'm telling the truth, something you gave up years ago. You don't know what that old woman's hiding. You don't know what this city really is." "I know what you are," she snapped back. "And so does everyone else. Now." He grabbed her arm, not hard but firm. Wrong move. A bystander filmed the whole thing. Maya didn't yell. She just stared him down and said one line loud enough for the recording to catch. "You want to silence a woman again, Officer Cooper? That's your legacy?" Within hours, the video went viral. Again, city officials had no choice. That night, Cooper was placed on indefinite suspension. His badge was taken. His access was revoked. Elijah stood with Maya at a press conference outside City Hall. Odessa watched from her apartment, her fingers tight on the cane. Her son spoke calmly into the microphone. "My father tried to fix the system from the inside. They buried him. My mother stood alone. They ignored her. But now, she's not alone. And we're not done." The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. The city buzzed, and deep inside the 9th Precinct, every officer knew this wasn't just a tribunal anymore. It was a reckoning. Orgot. "Thank you for not letting them erase him." Odessa nodded, her throat tight. "They can forget us, but we don't forget each other." Across town, Maya uploaded the Odessa Files Part 2, Inside the Silence. She included the leaked reports with careful redactions. Within an hour, city attorneys announced they were conducting a full audit of past 9th Precinct arrests tied to Cooper. The machine had turned. And for the first time in years, the silence wasn't suffocating. It was cracking. The courtroom was larger than the tribunal chamber. The wood polished, the flags upright, the audience benches packed with journalists, law students, and citizens leaning forward as if watching history breathe. Odessa sat calmly at the plaintiff's table, Elijah beside her, suit crisp, eyes sharp. Across from them, Cooper sat with his new legal team. Twice the cost, half the confidence. The judge, a black woman known for zero tolerance on corruption cases, entered. "Court is now in session. Case number 3241, King v. City of Dalewood and Officer Dylan Cooper." The first witness called was Odessa. She took her place on the stand, fingers wrapped lightly around the cane that had once been snapped in half like her trust. Elijah stood. "Mrs. King, please tell the court why you're here." Odessa didn't rush. "I'm here because my husband believed in justice. I'm here because the department didn't. I'm here because Officer Cooper wasn't just a bad cop. He was, protected by worse silence." The defense objected. "Speculation." The judge replied, "Overruled." "Let her finish." Odessa continued. She recounted the day Arthur came home bruised from confronting Cooper during an illegal stop. The day he filed his final report. The day he didn't come home at all. "I wasn't supposed to speak," she said. "Widows are supposed to fade. But now I speak for every voice they try to mute." Gasps echoed when she submitted Arthur's original tapes, the ones never entered into IA records. The courtroom heard Arthur's voice, calm, resolute, and warning of the rot inside his department. Maya live-blogged every moment. Her updates were being reposted by national journalists, civil rights pages, and law students quoting Odessa like scripture. On the third day, Elijah delivered the turning point. He cross-examined a former precinct records clerk, recently retired, but finally ready to speak. "I was told to misfile complaints. I didn't know they were his," the clerk confessed, voice trembling. "I was scared for my pension." Elijah's tone remained soft. "Did you hide any of Arthur King's reports?" The clerk nodded. 3, under orders." "From whom?" "Lieutenant Reynolds, and Cooper was standing right there." Cooper flinched. On the fourth day, Cooper himself was called to the stand. His lawyer advised against it, but the court demanded a testimony. He sat, sweating slightly. Elijah approached. You denied the allegations in 2013, 2016, and 2018. Did you falsify any reports, Officer Cooper? No. Do you consider racial profiling to be real? I follow protocol. So, you believe the 92% of complaints against you filed by black citizens were all coincidence? Cooper shifted in his seat. Objection! Badgering! His lawyer shouted. The judge raised a brow. He asked a question. Answer it. Cooper's silence said everything. Outside, crowds gathered with signs. Some read, "Justice for Arthur." Others simply bore Odessa's name. Elijah ended with a closing statement that felt like thunder wrapped in silk. My father died unheard. My mother was dismissed. But the truth doesn't go away when you ignore it. It multiplies, and today this courtroom is full of it. Odessa stood slowly beside him as he returned to his seat. For once, it wasn't just their fight anymore. It belonged to everyone watching. The jury had been gone for 7 hours. Whispers filled the courthouse corridors like fog. Outside, the crowd had grown. Some sat on steps with signs in their laps. Others stood with phones ready, live streaming. Every movement near the courtroom door, Odessa waited in silence, hands folded in her lap. She didn't fidget, she didn't blink much. Elijah paced once, then returned to her side. You okay? He asked softly. I've already survived the worst, she replied. This is just air clearing. When the bailiff appeared, the doors creaked open and everyone snapped to attention. All rise. The jury filed in, their expressions unreadable. The judge looked down at the foreperson. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. The paper was handed over. Time crawled as the judge scanned it. Then her voice broke the tension. In the matter of King v. City of Dalewood and Officer Dylan Cooper, we find the defendants liable on all counts. Gasps exploded around the courtroom. Maya exhaled so sharply her notebook slipped from her lap. A young woman in the back sobbed. Odessa didn't move for a moment. Then her lips curved, not into a smile, but something deeper, a release. The judge continued, damages awarded, 2.3 million. Formal apology mandated from the Dalewood Police Department. Officer Cooper's badge to be revoked permanently. All closed IA cases involving Arthur King to be reopened. Cooper slumped in his seat, disbelief frozen across his face. His lawyer leaned in, whispering furiously, but he couldn't hear him anymore. His world had gone mute. Odessa turned slightly toward the gallery. Dozens of people stood. Not clapping, not shouting, just standing. In respect, one man whispered, "She did it." A teenager held up his phone, mouthing the words to his live stream. This is what dignity looks like. Outside, the crowd erupted. Candles were lit. Streetlights reflected off teary eyes. No riots, no fury, just a sea of voices chanting a name they'd once forgotten. Arthur King, Arthur King, Arthur King. Odessa stepped out onto the courthouse steps, her cane tapping once as she paused in front of the microphones. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. My husband told the truth. You buried it. But the truth doesn't rot. It grows. Roots, and now it's cracking the concrete. Reporters shouted questions. She raised one hand, silencing them. I don't want fame. I want a memory. I want systems to remember who they buried and who dug them back up. Elijah joined her. Maya stood just behind, notebook clenched. At that moment, the three of them weren't just individuals. They were a wave, and Cooper, stripped of his badge, his arrogance now nothing more than dust, was no longer the loudest voice in the city. Spring returned with unusual warmth, the kind that made old bricks glow gold in the sunlight and sidewalks hum with new life. In the heart of Dalewood, a new monument stood. It wasn't large, it wasn't shiny, but it was powerful. A curved black stone wall, etched with names, officers, civilians, whistleblowers, whose stories were once buried beneath silence. At the center of the wall was one name carved slightly deeper than the rest. Arthur Isaiah King. He stood, even when no one stood with him. The dedication ceremony drew hundreds. Police officers in dress blues stood side by side with civilians. Protesters from months ago now held candles instead of signs. The mayor was there. So were city officials. But everyone's eyes stayed on the front row, where Odessa sat in a navy shawl, cane resting at her feet. Elijah stood at the podium. He didn't read a speech. He spoke from the gut. My father didn't ask for praise. He asked for accountability, and when he died, the city forgot. My mother didn't. He turned toward Odessa. She carried the torch, quietly, with grace, with anger wrapped in dignity. And now Dalewood remembers, as it should. The mayor stepped up next, nervous, rehearsed. The city has begun implementing reforms to review past internal affairs investigations, expand oversight, and invest in community trust. It sounded nice. But the real work, Odessa knew, wouldn't happen at podiums. It would happen in paperwork, in policy, in quiet rooms where no cameras rolled. Maya stood off to the side, taking pictures, not notes. Her story series, The Odessa Files, had been nominated for 2 National Journalism Awards. But that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that. Now, when people Googled Arthur King's name, they didn't just find a footnote. They found a story, a fight, a woman who never backed down. After the ceremony, people came to Odessa in waves. Some shook her hand, some hugged her gently. A young officer approached nervously. "I read your husband's memos," he said. "They changed how I see this badge. I'm sorry for everything he went through, for everything you went through." Odessa placed a hand on his shoulder. "Just wear it right. That's all I ask." As the crowd thinned, Elijah walked her slowly back to a bench near the monument. She sat quietly, taking it all in. "He'd have liked this," Elijah said. Odessa nodded. "He would have stood in the back, arms crossed, pretending not to care." Elijah chuckled. "He'd be proud of you." She looked up at the stone wall. The names shimmered under the afternoon sun. "I didn't do it for pride," she said. "I did it so no one else would sit in silence. I did it so the next widow wouldn't have to carry a box of secrets alone." The wind stirred. Trees rustled gently. Behind her, Maya took one last photo, Odessa sitting in front of Arthur's name, the sunlight catching her silver hair like a crown. The caption she would post later read, "They thought she was powerless. She made the whole city remember." The protest signs were gone now. So were the reporters, the microphones, the sound trucks that once camped outside her building for weeks, blinking cameras watching her every move, as if waiting for her to cry, to collapse, to become the fragile woman they expected her to be. Now, in place of their noise, there was silence, but not the lonely kind, a sacred quiet, a hush filled with warmth and remembrance. On her doorstep were small offerings from strangers and neighbors alike. A white rose with a ribbon that read, "For Ruth," a hand-drawn sketch of Arthur in his badge and uniform, left by a little boy who'd only seen him in Maya's article. A peach cobbler from Mrs. Ellison in 4C, her 3rd one this month, delivered with a quiet smile and misty eyes. And the letter. It was written in blue ink on lined paper, slightly creased at the edges. A teenage girl had penned it in large, slanted handwriting. "Miss King, I never cared about justice or history before I saw your face. I didn't even know who Arthur King was. But now I want to be someone who helps people speak when they're scared. I want to be a lawyer, like your son, like your husband would have wanted. Thank you for being loud when it was hardest. Thank you for surviving." Odessa read that letter twice. Then again, she folded it gently and tucked it inside her Bible, not out of religiosity but out of reverence. She moved slower these days, not from age or fatigue, but from the comfort of having nowhere left to run and nothing left to prove. The kind of slowness earned by someone who carried a truth heavy enough to bury a city and still stood tall. One morning, when the air was light and cool, she did something no one expected. She walked, unassisted, proud, to the city library where Arthur used to volunteer on Saturday mornings. Her cane clicked gently across the stone steps as she entered, her footsteps like echoes from a time long past. The young librarian looked up, surprised, but her face softened. "Ms. King, I remember you." "I'm sure the shelves don't," Odessa said with a gentle smile. The librarian walked her over to a quiet corner, sunlit, tucked near the biographies. "We saved his chair," she whispered, eyes glistening. "No one ever sat there again, we just couldn't." Odessa ran her hand over the backrest. Then she sat, slowly, her body folding into the wooden frame like it belonged there. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just closed her eyes and tilted her face toward the sunbeam. The warmth on her skin wasn't just sunlight. It was memory, A few weeks later, Elijah returned, not in court shoes but in sneakers, sleeves rolled, his smile easier now. They ate lunch under a maple tree in the park where Arthur used to read aloud to neighborhood kids. "You staying longer this time?" Odessa asked. "I'm thinking about moving back," he said, picking at a sandwich. "There's a lot of cleanup left here. The city's healing, but slow." She smirked. "You get that patience from your father." He glanced sideways. "No, I get it from you." They sat watching college students setting up folding tables, bright signs reading, "Know your rights." "Police oversight now. Register, speak, change." One student, nervous but determined, approached Odessa, practically wringing their hands. "Ms. King, would you speak at our next panel?" She raised an eyebrow. "I'm not sure people want to hear an old woman talk about a fight they think is already won." The student shook his head. "That's exactly why they need to hear you, because you remember, and you survived." So she agreed. And when the day came, she arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in royal blue. When she stepped up to the mic, the chatter in the hall evaporated. Every phone lowered, every voice hushed. The silence wasn't polite, it was reverent. Later that month, Maya visited again, without a recorder, without a notebook. Just 2 cups of tea and a small bouquet of wildflowers. "Have you ever thought of writing a book?" she asked, sipping slowly. Odessa smiled. "You already wrote it for me, child." Maya leaned in. "Yeah, but the Odessa Files was for the world. The Odessa Testament, that could be for the soul." They both laughed softly, then fell into a comfortable silence that needed no explanation. That night, after Maya left, Odessa returned to her box of letters. One envelope sat heavier than the rest. She opened it slowly. "Odie," it read, "if they ever tried to make you feel small, you don't fight back with fire. You fight back with your spine, with your stillness. That stare of yours makes liars tremble. And if you ever raise your voice, I'll be listening." She clutched the paper to her chest, her eyes closed. "I raised it, Arthur," she whispered. And they listened. Outside her window, the city moved like always. Cars rushing, lights blinking, life pulsing. But somewhere beneath the rhythm of ordinary days, something had shifted. A silence, once shaped by fear, was now filled with her echo. And Odessa May King, once invisible in a crosswalk, now lived etched in stone, stitched into policy, and whispered in classrooms. Not because she shouted, but because she never bowed. Years had passed, quietly, but the city never forgot the woman who shook its walls without ever raising her voice. Dalewood still buzzed with the noise of ordinary life, horns blaring, children laughing, streetcars rattling along the tracks, but underneath it all was a new rhythm, a slower, steadier beat, one that whispered her name in the way the wind moved through the courthouse steps and the way rookies lowered their voices when they walked past the Arthur King Memorial Wall. At City Hall, a framed portrait hung near the lobby elevators. Arthur and Odessa side by side. Below it, a plaque. He stood when silence was easier. She rose when no one else would. The city had changed, but not because of viral outrage or political theatre. It changed because one woman endured, and because her story outlived the shame they tried to bury it under. Odessa's story became a curriculum, her letters preserved. In the city archives, her audio testimony played in freshman law classes. Her stare, the same one that once froze Officer Cooper, was now printed on murals across brick walls, captioned with a line she once whispered in grief, but now spoke in victory. "I don't shout. I will survive." One mural stood outside, the 9th Precinct itself. The officers there changed. The building didn't, but the energy, completely different. Recruits stood longer in front of her mural than the flag. Some saluted it. Others left flowers under it before graduation, and every year, on the anniversary of the tribunal, the city held a small vigil. Not just for Arthur, but for everyone like him. For every voice once lost in paper trails and cold desks. Odessa, now well into her 80s, never stopped walking, just moved slower. Her cane, once a symbol of her fragility, now stood like a scepter wherever she went. But even she knew she didn't need to fight anymore. She had already won. And the world around her had started carrying the fire forward. She spent most days on her front porch, the same one where she had once cried silently into her hands. Now she sat tall, the sun hitting her silver hair just right, wrapped in a shawl stitched from decades of memory. Her grandson, Arthur Elijah King Jr., barefoot, wild curls bouncing, ran circles around the front yard. He was 5, already bold, already curious. One day he asked her, "Grandma, why do people wave at you when we walk down the street?" She chuckled, "Because I scared a lot of important people once." He blinked. Why were they scared? She looked him dead in the eyes. "Because I didn't run when they roared. I just stood there and waited for them to fall." He nodded solemnly, then ran back to the garden, chasing his shadow. Elijah joined her on the porch. He'd aged, too. Less courtroom fire now, more peace in his eyes. A lawyer still, but one who now mentored more than litigated. He ran a foundation in his father's name, hundreds of students, dozens of legal wins. "You know, he told his teacher today he wants to fight people like you do," Elijah said, pointing toward his son. Odessa smiled, slow and wide. "Then teach him to fight with truth, not fists. And when that doesn't work, teach him to outlast the lies." They sat for a while, not speaking, just watching the sun shift across the fence posts, watching wind push life forward. Inside the house, the walls were covered in a museum of quiet history. Arthur's precinct photo, Maya's book framed and signed, a laminated printout of the million-signature petition that ended Cooper's career, and in a box near Odessa's chair, the original flash drive. It still worked, but she didn't open it anymore. She didn't need to. One night, as stars filled the sky and porch lights flickered across the block, Odessa pulled out the final unopened letter from Arthur. She hadn't touched it in years. The seal was fragile now. She broke it slowly. Hands. "Calm, Odie," it read. "If they silence me, know this. You are the story, not me. You're the fire I saw from the first day. If they come for you, don't flinch. Don't rage. Just stare back and let them see what they've done. They'll crumble before you ever have to shout." She folded the paper, pressed it to her lips, then to her chest. A breeze rolled through the trees. Wind chimes sang in soft protest. Somewhere in the background, sirens wailed. But they didn't feel threatening anymore. They felt like echoes, warnings to the old world that a new guard was in place. Arthur Jr. climbed up beside her on the porch swing, curling under her arm. "Will you tell me the story again, Grandma?" She kissed the top of his head. "Which part?" "All of it," she laughed. "It's long, baby, and it starts with silence. I like the part where you made the bad man give you back your cane." "That wasn't the ending," she said. That was the beginning. As the swing creaked beneath their weight and stars thickened overhead, Odessa May King leaned back. Her bones ached, but not from battle. From time. She had walked through fire, survived silence, cracked the system, and left a trail that the world would follow. She didn't need to speak anymore, because every courthouse, every child in a classroom, every officer in training, every whisper of justice now carried her name, Odessa, unbowed, unbroken, unforgettable.